Forest Mysteries. The first light of dawn struggled to break through the thick frost coating the cabin's windows, casting a pale, diffuse glow over the snow-blanketed landscape. Outside, a relentless snowstorm continued its furious dance, whipping icy flakes into swirling patterns that blurred the horizon and muffled every sound. Inside, silence reigned, broken only by the faint groan of the wooden floor and the distant whistle of wind battering the walls. Samuel Carter sat upright in his battered armchair, a threadbare blanket loosely wrapped around his shoulders. His eyes, once sharp and keen, now lingered on the frost-etched panes, tracing the delicate, crystalline patterns that resembled frozen webs. His breath fogged the glass briefly before vanishing into the chilled air. A sudden shiver coursed down his spine, not from cold, but from an instinctual prickling at the back of his mind, as if something unseen lurked just beyond perception. Luna, his loyal companion, lay curled at his feet, her body tense and alert. She whined softly, ears twitching as if catching a faint, distant sound. Her nose twitched at the stale, icy air, then lifted toward the window, sensing something beyond the frozen veil, an anomaly that didn't belong in this silent wilderness. A sharp crunch suddenly echoed outside, deliberate and clear, cutting through the storm's roar. Samuel's gaze snapped toward the door, his brow furrowing. The snowstorm's howl masked the sound, yet his senses prickled with suspicion. He hesitated, then slowly approached the door, cautious but driven by an unshakable urge to investigate. His hand hovered over the latch, trembling slightly as he sensed the importance of what might be beyond. He pushed the door open a crack, the icy gust spilling inside, swirling snowflakes around his face. Peering into the whiteness, he searched for movement, for any sign of life or disturbance. The world outside remained a swirling, featureless white. Near the threshold, impressions pressed into the snow, distinct footprints, fresh and oddly purposeful. They led away from the cabin into the wilderness, toward the dense forest that bordered the valley. Samuel's pulse quickened, a mixture of curiosity and unease tightening his grip on the doorframe. He crouched carefully, brushing aside a layer of frost to examine the tracks more closely. The footprints were uneven, as if made by someone unfamiliar with the terrain or hurriedly crossing the snow. The toes pointed toward the trees, indicating the direction they intended to follow. His eyes then caught a torn scrap of paper snagged on a jagged stone beside the prints. He reached out with trembling fingers and retrieved the fragment, the cold seeping through his gloves. It was a ragged piece, torn roughly, with strange symbols scrawled across it in dark ink. The markings seemed unfamiliar, yet urgent, like a secret language meant to be deciphered only by the initiated. His gaze then fell on a note he found beneath the torn paper, an hastily scrawled line of numbers, coordinates pointing somewhere beyond his familiar surroundings. His mind raced, trying to connect the symbols with the location to understand who had left this message and why. Was it a warning, a plea, or a trap? The urgency in the markings suggested a danger or a secret that needed uncovering. Luna sniffed the torn fragment, then looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a silent question. Samuel hesitated, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing on him. Carefully, he slipped the paper in his coat pocket, sensing an invisible thread pulling him toward the mysterious message. He closed the door quietly, the storm still raging outside, and turned back toward the cabin. His thoughts churned with conflicting emotions: distrust, curiosity, a sense of responsibility. Whatever this message signified, ignoring it was no longer an option. He moved to gather his gear: an old, battered backpack, a sturdy jacket, and a small compass that had belonged to his father. Each item now seemed imbued with a new significance, as if charged with unspoken purpose. As he prepared, Luna patted around his feet, occasionally glancing toward the door, her body tense, as if urging him to reconsider. A deep breath steadied Samuel's nerves. Outside, the wind howled louder, but he felt an undeniable pull, an instinct to follow the trail. The coordinates burned in his mind, a beacon guiding him beyond the silence of his refuge into the unknown. He paused, gazing at the snow-covered landscape stretching before him. The world was cloaked in white, pristine and still. Yet beneath that surface, secrets stirred, an unspoken promise of discovery. The footprints, the torn message, the mysterious destination, they all whispered of a story waiting to be uncovered. Without hesitation, he tightened his coat and adjusted his pack, feeling the weight of newfound resolve. His heart, guarded yet resolute, urged him forward. Whatever lay ahead, he could no longer turn away from the call of the unknown. Stepping into the storm's fury, he moved toward the forest's edge, each crunch of snow underfoot echoing in the quiet morning. The tempest raged behind him, but ahead, shadows and mysteries beckoned, calling him into the depths of the wilderness, where silence was merely the prelude to revelation. The biting wind sliced through the sparse trees, causing brittle branches to rattle and scattering a sharp, icy sting that seemed to seep into Samuel's bones. His breath formed brief clouds in the leaden sky, the overcast veil pressing down as he adjusted his tattered hat and pressed on, Luna's paw prints leading into the tangled wilderness ahead. Each step on the snow-dusted trail produced a sharp crunch beneath his boots, the sound muffled by the thick silence of winter's grip. The faint tracks grew clearer as they wound deeper into the forest, broken twigs and disturbed snow revealing recent passage. Samuel's gaze fixed on the ground, noting the irregular pattern of footprints, deliberate, possibly human. The snow here was uneven, pressed down in patches, hinting a hurried movement or cautious stealth. His gloved fingers brushed over a snapped twig, then retraced the prints pressed into the icy crust, searching for clues. He paused, listening intently. The forest was unervingly silent, save for the faint whisper of wind and the distant, hollow howl that drifted through the trees. The sound was mournful, almost like a warning, echoing across the empty space. Samuel's muscles tensed, instinctively reaching into his coat pocket for a small, worn whistle. He hesitated, then let his hand fall away. Relying on his senses felt safer than risking attracting attention with a signal that could alert something unseen. Luna moved ahead, nose to the ground, her body tense but steady. Her ears flicked at every faint noise, her tail flickering with cautious alertness. Samuel maintained a slow, deliberate pace, careful not to disturb the fragile crust beneath him. Every step was calculated to avoid slipping or losing footing on the treacherous terrain. The ground grew more treacherous. Patches of ice shimmered like glass, hidden beneath a thin layer of snow, ready to send him tumbling if he was careless. A sudden gust of wind lifted a flurry of snow from the branches, revealing a cluster of broken twigs and fresh footprints crossing the trail. Samuel knelt, brushing snow aside with gloved fingers. The tracks here were larger, unevenly spaced, suggesting hurried movement or an attempt to conceal the trail. His eyes narrowed as he surveyed the surroundings. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted branches casting long shadows even under the dull sky. Luna's body stiffened, and she emitted a low growl. Samuel's gaze snapped to her, scanning the thicket. A distant howl echoed again, closer now, more insistent. His heart quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. The sound didn't necessarily mean immediate danger, but it heightened his sense of vulnerability. He reached for his satchel, pulling out a small leather-bound notebook, flipping through pages filled with notes and sketches. The terrain was unfamiliar, but the clues, footprints, broken branches, distant calls were clear enough if interpreted correctly. He was about to stand when Luna suddenly lifted her head, sniffing the air sharply. Her body tensed, and she let out a questioning bark. Samuel followed her gaze toward a narrow gap between two trees. He moved closer, cautious of slipping on the icy ground. Peering through the opening, he saw a faint trail of disturbed snow leading downhill, steeper and more unstable than the path they had been following. A shiver ran through him as he considered what this signified. The trail was fresh, clearly made by someone or something familiar with these woods. Every instinct urged him to turn back, to retreat to the safety of his cabin and abandon this dangerous pursuit. But curiosity, stubborn and persistent, refused to release him from its grip. The mysterious message, the strange footprints, they all beckoned him forward. He exhaled slowly, steadying the trembling edge of his resolve. This was the moment he had anticipated when hesitation met determination. Carefully, he signaled Luna to stay close and moved toward the downhill slope. The terrain was more unstable here, with snow-covered rocks and patches of ice threatening to shift beneath his weight. His boots skidded once, a reminder of how fragile each step was on this treacherous surface. A faint rustling sound emerged, soft, muffled by the wind, but distinct enough to catch his attention. Samuel froze, ears straining. The noise came from just beyond the line of trees, subtle movement hinting at unseen presence. His grip tightened on his walking stick, knuckles white beneath his gloves. Luna's body tensed beside him, her gaze fixed on the shadowy underbrush. He hesitated, debating whether to call out or remain silent. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the only sound the distant echo of that haunting howl. Every instinct screamed caution, yet he knew he couldn't afford to turn back now. The trail, the footprints, the distant sounds, they all formed a mosaic of clues pointing to something unseen but near. His foot slipped on a slick patch, forcing him to brace himself against a gnarled tree trunk. The rough bark scraped his palm, grounding him momentarily. He looked around, eyes flickering between shadows and the trail ahead. The woods were alive with unseen eyes, watching, waiting. A sudden crack of breaking would shatter the silence, causing both Samuel and Luna to stiffen. Luna growled softly, lowering into a crouch. Samuel's pulse hammered in his chest, but he remained still, listening intently. The sound had come from behind him, not ahead. Slowly, he turned, narrowing his eyes and tuning his ears for any further noise. The trail beneath his feet was becoming more uneven, the snow thinning and icy patches more frequent. The environment was shifting, more unstable, more dangerous. Yet, an irresistible urge to continue pulled him forward. Every step brought him closer to answers about the message, the footprints, the lurking presence. He prepared to move again when a sudden gust of wind stirred the branches, whispering secrets from the unseen depths of the forest. The distant howl resumed, fading into the distance, but the unease lingered. Samuel took a deep breath, grounding himself against the cold air. He pressed on, cautious but resolute, into the shadows. Something in the woods had changed, darker, more alive with unseen eyes. He could feel it, the weight of unseen watchers, and the faint promise that the truth he sought was just beyond reach, hidden beneath the next snowdrift or behind the next bend. In that moment, the realization sank in. There was no turning back. Whatever awaited in these woods knew he was here, and now he had to face it. Samuel's gaze was fixed on the jagged silhouette of the cliff edge, the dying light casting fractured shadows over the icy valley below. The wind tore through him with relentless ferocity, tugging at his coat and whipping snow into sharp flurries that stung his cheeks. Every gust seemed to carry whispers of movement, unseen yet imminent, raising hairs on his neck. Luna's low growl vibrated in her throat, alert and tense, warning him of unseen danger lurking nearby. He moved cautiously toward the precipice, each step deliberate, mindful of the treacherous footing. The crusted snow beneath his boots was slick with a thin sheen of ice, cracking softly with every step. His eyes flicked downward, catching sight of the overturned sleds scattered across the snowfield below. Their wooden frames lay askew, some shattered, others toppled, abandoned in disorder. Fresh tracks crisscrossed the white expanse, leading from the shadowed forest into the wreckage. They appeared recent, deliberate, and unambiguous evidence of recent human activity. A cold shiver ran down Samuel's spine. The tracks were unmistakably fresh, no more than a few hours old. Whoever had abandoned these sleds had been here recently, and their purposeful pattern suggested someone was still nearby, perhaps watching. His grip tightened on his walking stick, knuckles whitening, as the distant muffled sounds of movement floated on the wind, soft, persistent, and unnerving. He scanned the terrain, narrowing his eyes against the fading light. The valley stretched out beneath him, dotted with jagged ice formations and snowdrifts that shimmered eerily in the twilight. Shadows flickered across the landscape, like ghostly remnants of past struggles. Luna's paws crunched softly on the snow, the only other sound apart from the mournful howl of the wind. Suddenly, Luna's ears pricked forward, her nose lifting into the air. She emitted a low, urgent growl, her body tense and muscles coiled. Her stance shifted into alert readiness, eyes fixed on a point just beyond Samuel's peripheral vision. He followed her gaze, but saw only swirling snow and the faint outline of the wreckage. A gust of wind swept through, colder and louder, making him instinctively draw his coat tighter. He peered into the darkness, eyes darting from shadow to shadow, searching for movement. The sensation of being watched intensified, prickling his skin and raising the hairs on his arms. He hesitated, then slowly sank to his knees, inching closer to the edge. The snow here was packed firm, but a faint indentation in the white surface hinted at recent activity. Perhaps someone crouched or sat moments ago. The footprints led directly toward the wreckage, but then abruptly veered off into the denser forest, as if deliberately avoiding something. His mind raced. Who would leave sleds here in such an exposed location? Why abandon them in the first place? The questions churned but found no answers. Only an overwhelming sense that unseen eyes watched him, orchestrating the quiet chaos around. Luna's growl softened into a snarl, her body coiled and ears pointed forward. She shifted her weight, ready to spring or retreat, her gaze fixed on a narrow trail leading into the trees. The wind carried a faint, rhythmic crunch, like deliberate footsteps approaching from the shadows, slow and steady. Samuel's heart pounded, but he kept his breathing even. Every instinct urged him to retreat, to find safety behind the rocks or return to his cabin. Yet curiosity and stubborn resolve kept him rooted. He raised his hand slowly, signaling Luna to stay, then edged closer to the precipice, eyes narrowing. A flicker of movement caught his attention, a small, swift shape darting behind a cluster of snow-covered rocks. He tensed, muscles coiled for reaction, but the figure vanished almost instantly. Still, the trail of footprints persisted, leading toward the cliff's base where shadows deepened. He considered descending into the valley, risking the treacherous descent and whatever lay hidden beneath the darkness. The thought of losing this vantage point, of missing vital clues, tightened his stomach. But the idea of an unseen observer below, watching from the shadows, pressed heavily on him. Luna suddenly let out a low whine, her nose twitching as she picked up a new scent, faint, smoky, with a hint of burnt wood. She stepped forward cautiously, ears alert, hackles raised slightly. The scent hinted at recent activity, someone seeking shelter or hurriedly leaving the area. Samuel hesitated, then reached slowly into his satchel, fingers brushing the worn leather. Inside, he kept a small compass and a tattered notebook, remnants of his past life. He weighed his options: stay and observe, risking discovery, or attempt a careful descent into the unknown. A sudden shift in the wind carried a muffled sound, like a branch snapping or a step on frozen leaves. The noise froze him in place. His eyes darted to the trail, then to Luna, who was now fully alert, teeth bared slightly as she scented the air. He made a decision. He would not be driven away by shadows or unseen eyes. Not yet, but he knew moving into the depths below could change everything. reveal truths long buried, or unleash dangers better left undisturbed. He slowly backed away from the edge, careful not to disturb the fragile silence. His gaze lingered on the trail, waiting for any sign of movement. The wind's howl grew louder, almost as if warning him to stay still, to listen, to remain cautious. The footprints, the wreckage, the distant sounds, they all painted a picture of chaos and pursuit. Whatever had abandoned the sleds was still nearby, watching, waiting. Samuel understood with chilling clarity that the moment of decision was imminent. Descend into the valley and confront whatever lurked below, or stay on the precipice, watching from the shadows, uncertain if the unseen threat was already within reach. As he moved cautiously away from the edge, a new realization settled over him. The clues he sought were leading him deeper into a web of secrets. The abandoned sleds, the recent footprints, the faint scent of smoke, all pointed to a disturbance far beyond simple survival. Someone or something had been here recently, and their presence was still tangible. He glanced back once more at the shadowed forest, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon him. His resolve hardened. He would follow the trail, not because he was reckless, but because he needed answers, answers that might cost him dearly. The game was no longer about mere observation. It was about uncovering the truth, no matter how dark or dangerous it became. Luna's low growl echoed again as she sniffed the air, her body tense. Samuel tightened his grip on his stick, then stepped carefully toward the forest's edge, determined to find out what lay hidden in the shadows. The wind howled louder, as if warning him to proceed with caution, but he pressed on, driven by the need to uncover the secrets buried beneath the icy silence. Samuel hesitated at the edge of the narrow canyon, the icy walls towering like ancient guardians frozen in time. Night had fully settled, shrouding the landscape in darkness, with only the faint glow of moonlight reflecting off the frost-glazed surface. The biting cold seeped through his coat, numbing his fingertips, yet his gaze remained fixed on the shadowed opening ahead. Luna pressed close, her ears pinned back, every muscle taut with alertness. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint, rhythmic crunch of snow beneath his boots. Shadows flickered along the icy walls as the wind whispered through cracks, carrying an almost inaudible murmur. Samuel's eyes darted from the crevice to the surrounding ice, searching for movement, for signs of life or threat. He took a cautious step forward, the snow giving way slightly on the slick surface. The opening was narrower than he anticipated, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through without squeezing. His breath fogged in the cold air as he paused, listening intently. The wind tugged at his coat, but his senses sharpened. A faint whisper drifted from within the darkness, muffled yet distinct enough to tighten his stomach. Voices, murmuring. The sound was too distant for words, yet the tone was unmistakably human, urgent, hurried, tinged with a strange sense of desperation. His mind raced with possibilities. Someone inside was waiting, hiding, or guarding something vital. The suspicion grew stronger, and his grip on his knife tightened. Luna's ears twitched toward the crevice, then back to Samuel, her stance tense. She let out a low growl, a warning, or perhaps a question. Samuel hesitated, hand hovering near his pocket, fingers brushing the cold metal of his knife. He weighed the risk of entering against the possibility of uncovering something crucial. The wind intensified, carrying the voices clearer, fragmented but recognizable. Not yet. Too risky, wait. The words were hurried, tense. Someone was inside, possibly watching or guarding. The realization that he might not be alone sharpened his resolve. Turning back now would leave the mystery unresolved, buried beneath layers of ice and snow. He sank slowly to his knees, careful to make no noise, and reached out to grasp the edge of the crevice. The opening was jagged, a dark slit swallowing what little light remained. Peering inside, he adjusted his eyes, tried to discern movement or detail. Shadows danced just beyond his line of sight, and the whispering grew softer, as if someone had sensed his presence. A flicker of metallic gleam caught his eye, a faint glint deeper within the darkness. The whispers resumed, now more urgent, as if the unseen occupants had become aware of him. A rhythmic tapping echoed from deeper inside, like someone pacing or perhaps an object being moved. Samuel's mind raced to interpret what it might be: an intruder, a guard, or an unanticipated witness. He pressed closer, muscles tense, lips tightening. Entering could mean confrontation or discovery. Staying back might mean missing vital clues. The voices fell silent for a moment, as if waiting for something or someone. The thick silence stretched, broken only by Luna's low growl vibrating through her chest. His eyes flicked around, searching for signs of what lay beyond. Shadows played tricks, but he caught a brief glimpse of movement, a metallic flash catching the faint moonlight. The whispers resumed, softer now, as if the occupants had realized they were observed. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from within, an ice shard shifting, or perhaps a footstep on frozen ground. Samuel froze, heart pounding not from fear, but from the sudden noise. The air grew colder, and the sense of unseen eyes pressing in intensified. He knew he faced a choice: venture deeper or retreat into the darkness. A new sound emerged, a faint, melodic hum that seemed to seep from the shadows themselves. It was haunting, strangely soothing yet unsettling. The whispers, tapping, and hum blended into a dissonant chorus that stirred something primal within him, a warning or an invitation. His hand trembled as he reached out once more, grasping the edge of the opening. The icy wall was slick beneath his fingertips, resisting his touch. His breath fogged the air as he slowly slid inside, body inching through the narrow gap. Darkness swallowed him, the cold wrapping around him like a shroud. Inside, the space was cramped, barely enough to stand. Shadows clung to the damp, frost-covered walls, and the faint scent of damp earth and ice filled his nostrils. The whispers persisted, now clearer, an exchange of hurried words that made little sense, but carried an unmistakable sense of urgency. He moved cautiously, eyes darting for any sign of movement or objects of interest. Then, faint but unmistakable, a glow appeared deeper within, the flickering of a small light dancing along the walls. The voices shifted, rising in pitch and intensity, as if the unseen occupants had noticed his intrusion. The atmosphere thickened with tension, hinting at revelation or danger. Samuel's mind raced. He realized that whatever lay ahead could forever alter his understanding of this place. He hesitated briefly, then steeled himself. The shadows beckoned, secrets waiting to be uncovered, and he knew he could not turn back now. With deliberate resolve, he moved deeper into the darkness, prepared to confront whatever was hidden behind the veil. As he advanced, the faint hum grew louder, resonating through the confined space, blending with the whispers and the rhythmic tapping. The flickering light grew steadier, revealing a crude arrangement of objects, perhaps remnants of previous visitors or something more deliberate. The air was thick with anticipation, a silent signal that he was close to discovering the truth. In that moment, Samuel understood that this encounter would not only reveal hidden truths, but also challenge his assumptions about the danger lurking in the cold shadows. The night had shifted. The mystery was no longer just a distant suspicion, but an imminent reality. His grip tightened on his knife, and Luna's low growl echoed softly as they pressed forward together, stepping into the unknown with eyes wide open and senses on high alert. Samuel paused at the mouth of the narrow cave, the weak glow of the moonlight spilling through the jagged opening. The air was damp and cold, pressing against his skin and seeping into his bones. The scent of moss and decay hung heavy in the darkness, mingling with the faint, musty odor of old earth. His breath formed fleeting clouds as he hesitated, ears straining to catch the subtle sounds echoing within. The distant drip of water, the faint rustling of unseen creatures, and the soft, cautious padding of Luna's paws beside him. He clenched his grip on the lantern, its fragile flame flickering in the shadows. His heart beat steadily, yet the tension in his muscles betrayed his calm exterior. Every step forward felt heavier, burdened by the unknown depths ahead. Still, an irresistible pull urged him onward. Curiosity, perhaps, or a need to uncover what secrets the darkness concealed. Luna sniffed the air, her nose close to the uneven ground, ears twitching at every faint sound. Her fur bristled slightly, alert and tense. Samuel watched her, sensing her unease, and adjusted his stance, more cautious now. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the slow drip of water echoing from somewhere deeper inside, a reminder of the cave's quiet menace. He moved carefully, each step deliberate to avoid loose stones or hidden pitfalls. The passage narrowed abruptly, forcing him to stoop. His fingers brushed against the damp, slick wall as he navigated the constriction. The lantern's beam cut a thin line into the darkness, revealing jagged rock formations that seemed to press inward, closing him off from escape. Suddenly, a sharp metallic scent reached his nostrils, unfamiliar and piercing. His gaze darted around, searching for the source. Near a small pile of debris, partially concealed beneath a thin layer of snow and dirt, he spotted something unusual. A bundle of supplies lay scattered, torn and weathered by time. Among them, a worn leather satchel, frayed at the edges, rested atop the debris. Nearby, a battered metal box, hinges rusted shut, was half buried beneath loose stones. He stepped closer, kneeling with deliberate caution. His gloved fingers brushed away dirt and snow, revealing a torn cloth wrapped around what appeared to be personal belongings. His eyes flicked to Luna, who sniffed the air sharply, ears flattening, then backed away slightly, her body tense and alert. From the debris, he uncovered a crumpled cloth embroidered with faded symbols. It was stained with moisture, but the pattern was familiar, an insignia he had seen before, once in a forgotten manuscript. His pulse quickened, yet he kept his movements steady, focused. As he examined the scattered items, a subtle shift in the atmosphere prickled his skin. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, like a whisper or a faint shuffle, echoed from the depths of the cave. His senses sharpened, and he froze, listening intently. The noise was irregular, a rustling of fabric or footsteps, but too faint to identify clearly. His eyes flicked toward the shadows, but nothing was visible. Still, the feeling of being watched intensified, prickling at his neck. Luna growled softly, low and warning, her body tense. Samuel instinctively reached for the pistol in his pocket, hesitating as he considered the risk. The cave's silence pressed down on him, thick with anticipation. He shifted his gaze back to the scattered supplies. Partially buried beneath snow and debris, he found a torn piece of paper, worn, stained, with ragged edges. Carefully, he unfolded it, feeling its fragile texture, ink faded but still legible. A hastily scrawled note emerged, written in a language he recognized from obscure texts. Clues from a past life, fragments of a story long buried. Words like danger, escape, and a name he didn't recognize blur by moisture and time. The message appeared incomplete, torn, or deliberately concealed. His fingers trembled slightly as he clutched the note, feeling both its physical weight and its symbolic significance. The realization settled. This was someone's final message, a fragment of a story that lingered in the shadows. Whose belongings were these? What had they been fleeing from? And why had they abandoned them here, in this forgotten corner of the world? Luna sniffed the air again, more insistently now, her tail low but her stance alert. The sound from the depths grew more distinct, an almost inaudible shifting, the faint echo of footsteps, or perhaps the settling earth itself. The cave seemed alive with secrets, and Samuel knew he couldn't ignore them. He looked down at the note one last time before slipping it into his coat pocket. His chest tightened with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Whatever story these belongings told, it was far from over. More clues awaited, and the shadows and the depths beckoned him deeper. Standing slowly, senses heightened, he cast a cautious glance into the darkness ahead. Every instinct urged him to turn back, to retreat and reconsider. But the mystery had become too compelling. He had to push further, to uncover the truth buried beneath layers of silence and shadow. With a steady breath, he stepped forward, prepared to face whatever lurked in the darkness, knowing that this discovery marked a turning point, something that would alter everything he believed about this place and himself. As he moved deeper into the gloom, the faint sound from below grew clearer, an almost rhythmic shuffling, a subtle disturbance in the stillness. Luna's growl deepened, her body tense, ready to strike or retreat. Samuel's grip on his weapon tightened, but he kept his focus on the path ahead, cautious yet driven by an urgent need for answers. The cave's oppressive silence was broken only by the faint, irregular echoes of movement. Whatever lay ahead was no longer just a shadow in the dark. It was a presence, a story waiting to be uncovered. And Samuel knew that whatever came next would change everything. Samuel stood rigid on the icy ridge, the first blush of dawn casting a pale glow over the fractured terrain. The biting wind pressed against his skin, yet the sky had cleared, revealing a cold, pale blue that sharply contrasted with the snow-dusted earth below. His breath formed fleeting clouds as he stared at the crumpled note clenched tightly in his gloved hand. The fragile paper was stained with frost, the ink faded but still faintly legible in parts. He unfolded the fragment carefully, eyes darting over the strange symbols intertwined with familiar words, some characters unfamiliar and jagged. The message contained a series of coordinates, numbers pointing to a distant, isolated location, and a plea written in a language he couldn't immediately recognize. Certain words like help and danger stood out, but most of the text was an indecipherable jumble. Frustration prickled at his mind's edges, a mixture of irritation and an urgent feeling that he was missing something crucial. His gaze flicked toward Luna, who sat alert, ears pricked, nose twitching as she sniffed the crisp air. Her tail was stiff, her stance tense. Earlier, she had sensed movement, her hackles raised, ears forward, and now her sharp bark shattered the silence, piercing and insistent. Samuel's eyes narrowed as he scanned the distance beyond his reach. Shadows flickered at the edge of his vision, and a faint rustling sound suggested movement, someone or something approaching. He pressed the note into his pocket, instinctively clutching it as he focused on the unfolding scene. The wind had intensified, carrying a cold whisper that tugged at his collar and made him shiver despite his layers. The landscape stretched endlessly, frozen wilderness, jagged rocks, distant ridges cloaked in dawn's haze. The coordinates beckoned, but an ominous feeling seeped into him. What awaited at that spot? Could he trust the note's message, or was this a trap? Luna's barking grew more urgent, her yelps sharp and commanding. She suddenly leapt to her paws, ears perked, eyes darting toward the unseen horizon. Her stance was defensive, almost protective. Samuel's hand instinctively reached for his rifle, but he hesitated, recalling that rushing in might escalate the threat. Instead, he froze, listening to the faint crackle of snow shifting under unseen weight. A rustle sounded again, closer now. Samuel glimpsed a flicker of movement, something dark darting behind a boulder, vanishing almost as soon as it appeared. His heart hammered, despite years of solitude and caution. Was it a stranger, an animal, or something else entirely? He took a deliberate step forward, slow and measured. Every movement was calculated to avoid startling whatever lurked nearby. The snow crunched softly beneath his boots, each sound amplified in the stillness. Luna stayed close, her growl low but controlled, a warning rather than an attack. Suddenly, a figure emerged from behind the boulder, tall, cloaked in a weathered coat, face obscured by a hood. The stranger's eyes caught the faint sunlight, flickering with suspicion or curiosity. Samuel's muscles tensed, instinctively readying for confrontation. But then a flicker of recognition sparked within him. Something about the way the figure moved, the way their gaze lingered. "Who are you?" Samuel called out, voice steady but cautious. The stranger paused, then slowly lowered the hood, revealing a weathered face, neither hostile nor friendly. Eyes, sharp and assessing, met Samuel's own. Looking for answers, the newcomer replied softly, voice muffled by the cold air. "And I believe you are too." Samuel's grip tightened around the note, protectively clutching its fragile contents. "What do you want?" The stranger took a cautious step closer, hands raised slightly in a non-threatening gesture. "I've been watching you. That message, it's not just a random note. It's a key, something that could change everything if understood correctly. But you're not the only one interested." The words hung heavily, thick with implication. Samuel's mind spun, questions flooding his thoughts. Who was this person? How did they know about the note? And what danger lurked at the coordinates? Luna growled again, more fiercely now, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Her hackles rose, and she edged closer to Samuel, ready to defend. The stranger's gaze flicked to her, then back to Samuel. "You need to move," the stranger urged softly. "That place at those coordinates, it's not safe. There are things there, things you don't understand, and someone else knows about it. Someone who doesn't want you to find out." A shiver ran down Samuel's spine. His eyes darted back to the note, then to the horizon, weighing his options. Every instinct told him to retreat, to avoid whatever danger was approaching. But curiosity and the need to uncover the truth pressed him forward. He inhaled deeply, steadying himself. "Tell me what you know," he demanded. The stranger hesitated, then nodded slowly. "It's about a buried history, an echo of events long suppressed. The message, the coordinates, they lead to something meant to stay hidden. But now it's awakening. If you go there unprepared, it could destroy everything you hold dear." Samuel's jaw clenched. The words resonated with foreboding, yet also ignited a faint spark of purpose. His fingers brushed the worn leather of the satchel at his side, his only link to the past, his only hope of understanding. "Why should I trust you?" he asked quietly. The stranger's eyes softened slightly. "Because I've been where you are. I've seen what happens when secrets remain buried. You're already involved, whether you realize it or not. The question is, will you walk away or face what's coming?" A gust of wind swept across the ridge, carrying icy snowflakes that stung his cheeks. Samuel looked once more at the distant peaks, shrouded in dawn's early light. The coordinates still beckoned, but now they carried a weight far heavier than before. He tightened his grip on the note, then looked back at the stranger. His decision was made. Despite the risks, he couldn't turn away. Something vital lay beyond that point, and he had to uncover it, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. Luna barked again, more insistently, as Samuel took a deliberate step forward. His resolve was clear. The danger was real, but so was his purpose. The path ahead would be perilous, yet it was the only way to unravel the truth. And perhaps to finally decipher the message that haunted him since the moment he discovered the footprints. The first light of dawn was fading, replaced by a pale, overcast sky stretching endlessly over the icy expanse. The crunch of snow under Samuel's boots echoed softly, the fresh powder muffling sound and reflecting the dull gray light. Every step was measured, cautious, an instinct honed by countless nights in this frozen wilderness. Luna moved silently beside him, her nose pressed close to the ground, scenting the cold air with quiet vigilance. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint crackle of snow shifting and the distant whisper of wind threading through sparse, wind-bent trees. Samuel kept his gaze fixed on the narrow trail ahead, eyes darting over the uneven terrain, patches of ice glinting dangerously in the shadows, rocks hidden beneath the snow. His mind was alert, aware that recent disturbances could mean trouble. Something had changed here. He was sure of it. Suddenly, Luna halted, ears pricked, tal stiffening. She sniffed sharply, then tilted her head toward a small clearing off to the side. Samuel slowed, instinctively tightening his grip on his rifle. His heartbeat steadied but remained deliberate as he followed her gaze. There, partially hidden behind snow-dusted bushes, was a crude shelter, tarp stretched over uneven logs, supplies scattered around in disarray. The fire pit in front was cold, ash and charred scattered like remnants of hurried departure. He crouched, brushing snow aside to examine the site. Fresh footprints led directly to the shelter, deep impressions in the powder, recent enough to suggest activity within the last few hours. The tracks zigzagged, some showing signs of uneven weight, perhaps someone injured or exhausted. He traced the footprints with his fingers, noticing the irregular stride and a faint drag on one boot that hinted at fatigue. Luna circled cautiously, her nose to the ground, alert for more signs. Samuel's eyes swept the surroundings, broken twigs, pine cones scattered nearby, signs of someone trying to gather kindling. A battered metal cup lay half buried in the snow, its handle bent and scratched, evidence of rough handling or hurried packing. He hesitated, torn between pressing forward and retreating. His hand brushed against a fragment of cloth caught on a low branch, a pale gray scarf, frayed at the edges. He pulled it free, inspecting it carefully. The fabric was soft, worn, and carried a faint scent of smoke mixed with something else, perhaps the subtle aroma of human skin. The scarf's presence ignited a flicker of suspicion. Who had been here? Why had they left so suddenly? The questions pressed into his mind, but he kept his expression neutral. Slowly, he knelt by the shelter, scanning the area with heightened caution. The footprints pointed deeper into the valley, disappearing around a bend where the terrain steepened sharply. He straightened, studying the trail ahead. Beyond the shelter, the snow was less disturbed, indicating the path continued in that direction. A gust of wind swept through, causing a shiver to run down his spine. Luna nudged his hand, her body tense, eyes darting around. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. The decision was made. He would follow the trail, but with extreme caution. Every step had to be deliberate. Any noise or misstep could give him away or cause him to miss critical clues. The landscape was unforgiving, and he knew that even a small mistake could be fatal. As he moved forward, a strange sensation prickled at the back of his neck, an almost imperceptible shift, like a shadow flickering at the edge of his vision. He paused, eyes narrowing as he scanned the surroundings. Nothing appeared out of place, just snow, ice, and the endless quiet. Yet, the feeling persisted, a subtle awareness that he was being watched. His grip tightened on the strap of his backpack, anchoring him. The trail curved gently downward, leading toward a thicker grove of trees where shadows lengthened in the morning light. The footprints beckoned him onward, but his instincts warned him to proceed carefully. Suddenly, Luna froze again, ears twitching sharply. She emitted a low growl, a guttural warning that conveyed alertness and unease. Samuel froze, listening intently. For a moment, all was still. Then a faint rustling echoed behind a nearby boulder. Not loud enough to be human speech, but enough to sharpen his senses. He crouched, steadying his breathing, and reached for his rifle, slung across his shoulder. The cold metal was reassuring against his palm. Luna's hackles rose, and she growled softly, her body tense. Samuel edged toward the boulder, ears tuned to every sound, eyes narrowing. Peering around the corner, he saw only snow and shadow, but the prickling sensation of unseen eyes lingered, raising the hairs on his neck. He exhaled slowly, reminding himself that caution was his best weapon now. Carefully, he resumed his cautious advance, keeping close to the trail, the footprints guiding him deeper into the frozen silence. His mind spun with questions. Who had been here? Why abandon the camp so suddenly? And most critically, where had they gone? Each step drew him closer to answers, yet also deeper into the unknown. The trail ahead stretched into the distance, promising secrets buried beneath the winter's veneer. As the valley narrowed and the terrain grew steeper, Samuel sensed a shift, an almost imperceptible change in the atmosphere. The landscape no longer felt deserted. Something had stirred, an unseen presence, watching, waiting. He clenched his grip on the rifle, eyes darting from shadow to shadow, alert for movement. Luna suddenly stiffened, ears twitching again. She growled softly, her body tense with alertness. Samuel froze, listening. A faint rustling sound came from behind a boulder, subtle but enough to send a spike of tension through him. He crouched, reaching for his weapon, senses heightened. Peering around the obstacle, he saw only snow and darkness. Yet, the feeling persisted, an unseen gaze, a presence lurking just beyond sight. He exhaled slowly, forcing calm into his movements. Moving forward once more, he kept to the trail, the footprints a fragile thread guiding him into the silent, icy wilderness. His thoughts churned. Who had been here? Why leave so suddenly? And where had they gone? The trail wound ahead, promising answers, but also danger. Every step felt heavier, more deliberate, as if the landscape itself was resisting his search. The trees thickened, shadows lengthening as the morning light waned. The feeling of being watched intensified. Samuel's grip on his rifle tightened, muscles tense. The next few steps would determine what lay ahead and what might be watching him now. Samuel crouched behind the fractured wall of the abandoned cabin, eyes fixed on the silhouette emerging through the snow-blurred window. Outside, the relentless winter had sculpted a thick drape of white, muffling all sound and isolating him in a frozen silence. His breath fogged the stale air as he clutched the leather journal to his chest, heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Inside, the room was cluttered with remnants of past occupants, tattered blankets, rusted tools, and a shattered lantern. His gaze was irresistibly drawn to the battered desk against the far wall, where the journal lay open, pages browned and fragile. Carefully, he leaned forward, trying not to make a sound. Every movement was calculated. Noise could betray his position. The handwriting was hurried, but legible, with ink smudges that betrayed a frantic urgency. As Samuel read, a shiver ran down his spine. The entries spoke of a rescue mission gone awry, an expedition into the wilderness to find a missing team. The author detailed treacherous weather, dwindling supplies, and mounting despair. One entry, dated just days before the last, described an avalanche that had buried part of their camp, trapping some members beneath the snow. His fingers trembled as he turned the page, noticing the writer's tone shift from hope to desperation. The final note was a frantic plea for help, scrawled hurriedly. Asterisk, they're coming. We're running out of time. If you find this, don't trust the signals. They're not what they seem. Asterisk, the handwriting abruptly stopped, leaving a blank space where the author must have hesitated before abandoning the journal. A sudden shift in the atmosphere snapped Samuel out of his focus. Outside, muffled crunching sounds echoed softly against the snow. His eyes darted toward the door, heart hammering in his chest. Footsteps, deliberate and close, approached. He pressed his back against the wall, clutching the journal tightly, ears straining for any other clues. The sounds grew louder, closer. The faint scrape of boots on the porch, then silence. For a moment, everything was still. Samuel's mind raced. Should he stay hidden and hope the visitor passed by, or confront the unknown intruder, risking exposure? He chose concealment, slipping into the shadows beneath a broken window frame. His breathing slowed, controlled as he watched the door. The faintest movement, an arm reaching for the handle, made him freeze. A hand, gloved but trembling, grasped the doorknob and pushed gently. The door creaked open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the blinding whiteness outside. Samuel's eyes narrowed, muscles tensing. The visitor hesitated, then stepped inside cautiously, scanning the dim interior. A surge of suspicion flooded Samuel. Was this person friend or foe? The figure paused, then moved further in, muffled footsteps on the dusty floor. The room was too dark to see details clearly, but the posture betrayed tension, alert, wary. Clutching the journal tighter, Samuel's instincts urged him to stay silent. Yet curiosity prickled at his mind. The stranger's gaze flicked across the room, stopping on the open pages. They knelt briefly, fingers brushing over the paper, then looked around quickly, as if searching for something. Suddenly, the figure froze. A faint sound, something slipping from their grasp, caught Samuel's attention. A glint of metal flashed in the sparse light as the visitor moved closer, revealing a snow-dusted sleeve. They hesitated, then reached into their pocket, producing a small object. Samuel's pulse quickened. Could this be a trap, an ambush, or someone genuinely desperate for help? Every nerve urged him to bolt or hide, but a strange sense of obligation kept him rooted. The stranger took a cautious step forward, eyes fixed on the journal. A shallow breath escaped them, almost inaudible. The air grew thick with tension, silence heavy with unspoken questions. Outside, the wind shifted, causing snow to drift softly against the cabin walls. Then, unexpectedly, the stranger spoke, voice muffled but steady. "You found it." The words hung in the air, laden with significance. Samuel's eyes widened in surprise. The stranger knew about the journal, about the warning. He needed to decide. Should he reveal himself or stay hidden? His hand trembled as he reached slowly for his coat, the fabric rustling softly. The stranger's gaze flicked toward him briefly, then returned to the journal. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted. The stranger stepped closer, voice lowering. "We don't have much time." "They're near." The warning hit Samuel like a jolt, the weight of the situation pressing down. His mind raced. The journal had hinted at betrayal, and now the stranger's presence confirmed that someone else was aware of the danger. Trust was fragile, but revealing himself might be his only chance to understand what was truly happening. He hesitated, then pushed himself upright, emerging from the shadows. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice steady despite his pounding heart. The stranger paused, eyes narrowing, then finally stepped into the faint light, revealing a weathered face marked by exhaustion. The stranger's expression was cautious but resolute. "I'm here to stop them from using the signals to trap us. I've been tracking their movements, try to warn anyone who might listen. We're running out of options." Samuel's grip on the journal tightened. This revelation shifted everything. The signals weren't just false alarms. They were part of a larger scheme. His suspicion deepened, but so did his resolve. "Why did you come here?" Samuel asked, voice edged with suspicion. "Because I knew you'd find the journal," the stranger replied. "And I needed to warn you before it's too late. They're closing in, and if we don't act now, everyone will be lost." The words resonated deeply. Samuel realized that his initial instinct to hide had nearly cost him the only lead he had. Now, with this stranger's arrival, his understanding of the situation had shifted. The threat was more immediate, but so was the chance for cooperation. As the stranger moved closer, he noticed the faint glow of a device in their hand. An encrypted radio, perhaps. The realization that help was available, albeit limited, rekindled a flicker of hope. Outside, the wind howled louder, snow swirling against the cabin like a vengeful spirit. Inside, the tension remained thick, but a new alliance was forming. Samuel's perspective had changed. He was no longer alone in this fight. The path ahead was uncertain, but now he knew he wouldn't face it blindly. The door closed softly behind the stranger, sealing them together in the cold, silent cabin. The snow outside continued to fall, but inside, a fragile spark of trust and purpose ignited amid the shadows. Samuel's gaze was fixed on the figures emerging from the twilight, their silhouettes flickering against the snow-covered clearing outside his cabin. Shadows stretched long and jagged across the frozen ground, shifting with each gust of icy wind that cut through the air. His breath formed quick, fleeting clouds as his fists clenched tightly, muscles taut with tension. The approaching figures moved with purpose, their hurried steps crunching over frost-hardened snow, sending a ripple of unease curling in his chest. As they drew closer, their shapes sharpened, several bundled in mismatched, heavy clothing, faces obscured beneath hoods and scarves. Samuel instinctively stepped back, pressing himself against the rough wooden wall, his heart pounding with a mixture of suspicion and dread. Every detail was etched into his mind. The hurried gestures, the cautious glances over shoulders, the faint rustling of supplies or weapons hidden beneath layers of fabric. From his vantage point, he could hear muffled voices, rough and hurried, speaking in a language that sounded unfamiliar, yet somehow recognizable. Words clipped and tense, punctuated by sharp commands. Samuel furrowed his brow, trying to decipher their meaning, to catch a word or phrase that might reveal their intentions. His mind spun. Were they enemies? Allies? Or simply lost travelers wandering this desolate wilderness? One figure, slightly ahead of the others, paused and turned toward the cabin. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. The stranger's eyes, visible beneath a hood, seemed to scan the surroundings, lingering on the faint glow of his cabin through the cracks in the wood. A tense silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken questions. Suddenly, the group quickened their pace, closing the distance. Snow dusted their shoulders as they moved with urgency, their breaths visible in the cold air. Samuel's fingers instinctively reached for his rifle leaning against the wall, but he hesitated. Every instinct warned caution. These strangers might be desperate, dangerous, or both. The uncertainty of their motives made him hold back, weighing his options carefully. As they approached, one figure broke away from the group, stepping forward with deliberate purpose. His face was weathered, sharp-featured, eyes gleaming with wariness and authority. He stopped a few paces from the cabin, raising a hand in a gesture of peace, yet his expression remained guarded. "Who are you?" the man asked, voice rough but steady, slicing through the evening silence. His words sounded familiar, but also strange, as if borrowed from a language he'd heard long ago. Samuel's eyes narrowed, trying to interpret the tone and cadence, searching for clues. "I mean no harm," the stranger continued, voice lowering slightly. "We're seeking shelter." Samuel's grip on his rifle tightened. The words were simple, yet loaded with suspicion. Shelter from whom? For what purpose? His gaze flickered between the group and the dark forest behind them, every nerve alert, urging silence and caution. He sensed that revealing himself might be dangerous, yet staying hidden could mean missing an opportunity or inviting disaster. The man took a cautious step forward, eyes narrowing further. "We saw your light. We've been tracking your trail for days. It's not safe here. You shouldn't be alone." A ripple of tension coursed through Samuel. The sincerity, or perhaps desperation, in his tone was hard to read. Still, the warning was unmistakable. His mind raced through possibilities. Were they allies, or was this a trap? Could he trust them? A second figure, younger and visibly more anxious, called out from behind the leader. We need shelter. There's a storm coming. If we don't find refuge soon, we won't survive the night. The words hit him like a blow. Samuel's eyes shifted to the group, noting the exhaustion etched into their faces, signs of hardship, relentless pursuit, and desperation. The fragile situation demanded caution, yet he hesitated to reveal himself fully. The last thing he wanted was to provoke conflict or misunderstanding. He took a measured step back from the door, voice hesitant but firm. You're far from safety. What's your story? Why are you here? The leader hesitated, eyes flickering with indecision. We're survivors, he finally said, voice low. We've been chased by those who want to control this land. We're trying to reach allies, but time is running out. Samuel's mind spun with this revelation. They weren't random travelers. These were refugees fleeing something deadly, perhaps enemies he had only begun to understand. His grip on a rifle loosened slightly, but he kept it ready, alert. A sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, rattling the windows and stirring loose snow into the air. Shadows danced across the figures' faces, heightening the sense of uncertainty. The group shifted nervously, exchanging wary glances, weighing their options. In the tense silence, the leader's voice softened. We mean no harm. We only seek shelter for tonight. If you can help us, we'll owe you a debt. Samuel's gaze lingered on him briefly, then shifted to the others. The stakes had escalated. Trust was fragile, easily shattered in this frozen wasteland. He understood he faced a choice: reveal what he knew and risk confrontation, or stay silent, guarding his secrets and hoping they moved on. The cold night pressed in around him, heavy and unyielding. His mind raced, weighing the danger of revealing himself against the peril of turning them away. Every instinct urged caution, yet a small voice inside suggested he consider an alliance, however fragile. Finally, he drew a slow, deliberate breath. Stay where you are, he said carefully, voice steady but cautious. I'll decide soon. Keep your distance and stay alert. I don't trust easily. The leader nodded, raising his hands in a gesture of peace once more. The group settled into a tense, wary silence, shadows flickering around them, mirroring the fragile balance of trust hanging in the cold air. Samuel watched them for a long moment, every muscle tense. The decision had been made. His next move would shape everything. As the last light faded from the sky, he realized this encounter marked only the beginning. The fragile veneer of safety was cracking, and the true test of survival was about to begin. Night had fully settled when Samuel sat alone by the flickering glow of his lantern. Shadows flickered across the cabin walls, twisting into shapes that seemed to pulse with the wind's restless breath. Outside, the night was thick with silence, broken only by the distant howl of a wolf and the faint whisper of snow sliding against the wooden planks. Luna lay beside him, her body tense, ears swiveling at every creak and whisper. She sensed the unrest that lingered in the air, just as he did. He stared at the crumpled note on the table, its edges curled from the cold. The handwriting was hurried, yet urgent, an unmistakable plea. The message read, "Meet at the old quarry at midnight. Trust no one. The ink was smudged in places, moisture from his breath blending with the words. But the core message remained clear, searing itself into his mind. His thoughts churned. For days, he had wrestled with the possibility. Should he follow this cryptic lead? The stranger's sudden departure had left behind a trail of unanswered questions. And now, this note was a fragile thread pulling him toward the unknown. He hesitated, torn between the safety of solitude and the pull of curiosity. Deep inside, a sense of responsibility had quietly taken root, compelling him to act. Luna shifted, whimpering softly, pressing her nose into his hand. Her low whine broke the silence, drawing his gaze to her anxious eyes. She sensed his tension, the unspoken conflict gnawing at him. He reached out, gently scratching behind her ears, feeling her tremble beneath his fingertips. Slowly, he rose, careful not to disturb the fragile peace of the cabin. Outside, the wind's howling grew sharper, carrying whispers of distant storms and secrets buried beneath the snow. He moved to the window, peering into the darkness. The landscape was cloaked in shadows, trees jagged and black against the night sky. The moon, a thin sliver, cast a pale, ghostly glow over the icy terrain, illuminating the frozen expanse with an eerie shimmer. His mind replayed recent days, each clue, every encounter, trying to piece together the puzzle. Footprints leading away from abandoned shelters, cryptic messages scrawled in haste, signs of unseen activity. All pointed toward a truth buried beneath layers of frost and silence. Yet, with each step closer, the risks grew more tangible. Trust was fragile, and danger lurked unseen, waiting in the shadows. He took a deep, steadying breath, resolve firming within him. The choice was made. Quietly, he retrieved his coat, the heavy fabric muffling the faint sounds of movement inside the cabin. Luna followed, her paws silent on the wooden floor. As he opened the door, a gust of cold air swept in, biting at his skin and stirring the snow on the porch. Stepping into the night, he paused to listen. The world outside was hushed, save for the faint rustling of trees and the distant cry of a lone wolf. Every step toward the quarry felt weighted, each footfall muffled by the snow, echoing softly in the stillness. His senses sharpened, every sound, every flicker of movement in the shadows. The path to the old quarry was treacherous, carved by years of winter storms and neglect. He navigated carefully, the landscape revealing itself only in fragments under the moon's pale light. Jagged rocks jutted from the snow, and icy patches threatened to betray his footing. Luna kept close, her nose pressed to the ground, alert to every scent and sound. Reaching the outskirts of the quarry, he paused once more, scanning the darkness where the earth had been torn open long ago. The silence here was almost oppressive, broken only by the faint crunch of snow beneath his boots. His hand rested instinctively on his pocket, clutching the folded note, a reminder of the secret meeting. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a brief shimmer just beyond his peripheral vision. He stiffened, instincts flaring. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure lurking behind a pile of rocks, but when he focused, only emptiness stared back. The darkness refused to reveal its secrets easily. Then, faintly, he heard it, a soft rustling like fabric shifting or footsteps pressing into the snow. His heart rate slowed, not from fear, but from cautious anticipation. Was it the strangers? Or something else entirely? The cold deepened, tension mounting as he prepared to confront whatever awaited. A faint glow appeared just beyond the edge of his vision. A small, flickering light, possibly a lantern, moved slowly across the snow, approaching with deliberate purpose. Samuel tensed, eyes narrowing, every muscle coiled for action. The figure's shape was indistinct, but the movement was steady, confident. He reached instinctively for his rifle, though he hesitated, knowing he wouldn't fire without cause. His mind raced. What message did this visitor carry? Who had sent them? And what were their true intentions? The answers felt just out of reach, slipping through the shadows like mist. The figure stopped a few yards away, and a muffled voice drifted through the cold air. "Samuel, we've been waiting for you." The words carried weight, layered with meaning, yet cautious. Luna growled softly, a warning. Samuel's grip tightened on his weapon, but he held his ground, eyes fixed on the approaching silhouette. This was the moment, the turning point where silence would no longer suffice. He took a deliberate step forward, eyes locked on the stranger. The decision was made. Whatever secrets lay ahead, he would face them. The meeting at the quarry was no longer just a possibility. It was a necessity. The truth, long buried beneath layers of ice and silence, was about to surface. As the figure drew closer, the faint glow of the lantern revealed a face he recognized, marked by lines of worry and resolve. The voice, clearer now, confirmed his suspicion. It's time to uncover what's truly hidden beneath the ice. Samuel exhaled slowly, a strange calm settling over him. The night was no longer a realm of shadows and uncertainty. It had become a gateway, an opening to truths long concealed. With Luna by his side, he prepared to confront whatever darkness awaited, knowing this step would forever alter his understanding of the world he thought he knew. When the stranger finally reached him, the lantern's glow illuminated a face he recognized, eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. The voice, steady and low, confirmed what Samuel had suspected. It's time to see what's really beneath the ice. Samuel's grip on his rifle tightened, but he didn't raise it. Instead, he studied the figure, sensing that this encounter would change everything. The silent night stretched before them, thick with secrets and possibilities. He took a cautious step forward. The moment of truth had arrived. Whatever awaited at the meeting point, it would redefine his understanding. No turning back now. Samuel's boots crunched softly against the icy crust as he moved cautiously through the early morning shadows of the forest clearing. The wind, sharp and unyielding, tugged at his coat and carried a piercing chill that settled into his bones. His eyes flicked rapidly from one dark silhouette to another, searching for any sign of the marked location he had memorized overnight. The snow underfoot was uneven, disturbed by recent activity, and each step seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. A faint trail of footprints encircled him, crossing his path in hurried, irregular loops. Some were fresh, others partially melted by the rising sun, but all indicated recent passage. He paused, kneeling to examine the prints more carefully. The snow had been pressed down with purpose, the edges of the tracks sharp and distinct. They crisscrossed chaotically, overlapping in a pattern that suggested multiple people had moved through here, possibly trying to cover their tracks. Beside him, Luna's ears perked sharply, her body stiffening as she caught a scent. Her nose lifted, and she let out a low, warning growl, hackles rising along her back. Her body tensed, alert to danger. Samuel straightened, instinctively scanning the surroundings with a wary gaze. Luna's warning was unmistakable. Something was nearby, watching. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a small compass, confirming his bearings. The coordinates he had found pointed to a specific clearing, an open patch of earth amid the trees. But the signs of recent activity made him hesitate. Was this truly the rendezvous point, or a trap designed to lure him into an ambush? Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, rattling branches and stirring up a flurry of snow that briefly obscured the footprints. Luna's growl intensified, her stance shifting as she dug her paws into the frozen ground, eyes fixed past him. Her body was tense, ready to strike. "Easy, girl," Samuel whispered, voice low and steady. He kept his gaze fixed on the shadows Luna was focused on, hand hovering near his waist where his knife was sheathed. The silence grew thick and oppressive, broken only by the whisper of the wind and Luna's low warning growl. Then a flicker of movement caught his eye, just behind a cluster of bushes, almost too quick to see. His heart skipped, but he maintained a calm expression. Slowly, he lowered himself into a crouch, moving forward with deliberate care, each step measured to avoid cracking the brittle ice beneath his feet. As he approached the dense thicket, he noticed a faint smear in the snow, a streak of dried blood, smeared hurriedly in an uneven pattern. His stomach clenched. Whoever had been here recently was injured or worse. The evidence sent a cold shiver down his spine. Luna's growl deepened into a low bark, her hackles raised as she stared at the same spot. Samuel's eyes darted between her and the shadows, instinct telling him to stay alert. He slowly reached for his flashlight, flicking it on with a soft click. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating a battered cloth bag lying among the branches. He hesitated, then stepped closer carefully, aware of the subtle shifts in the terrain. The bag was torn, its contents spilling out. Faded photographs, a broken compass, a crumpled note with jagged edges. His fingers brushed the paper, unfolding it gently. A hurriedly scrawled message stared back at him. Asterisk they're watching. Trust no one. Meet at the old mill at dusk. Asterisk the handwriting was shaky, ink smudged in places, but the words were legible enough. His stomach sank further. This wasn't coincidence. Luna's growl grew louder, her body tense and ready. Samuel's eyes flicked back to the shadows, searching for the source of her unease. The wind carried a faint metallic clang, rhythmic and unsettling, like scraping metal against stone. His pulse quickened. He examined the scattered items again, then looked around the clearing, weighing his options. The footprints confirmed recent activity, but the message indicated a planned meeting, possibly a trap. His mind spun, trying to piece the puzzle together. Was this a genuine lead or a lure meant to ensnare him? A sudden rustling from the trees shattered the silence. Luna snapped her head toward the noise, snarling fiercely. The sound was followed by a faint crackle, as if someone was moving stealthily through the underbrush. Samuel's grip on his flashlight tightened. He edged backward slowly, eyes fixed on shadows. His instincts urged caution, but curiosity pushed him forward. The trap was obvious now. The blood, the footprints, the discarded belongings, all designed to lure him in. Yet he needed answers. He cast a quick glance at Luna, who now emitted a low, steady growl, her tail stiff and alert. Her stance was poised, ready to strike if necessary. He knew they couldn't afford hesitation. Suddenly, a figure emerged from behind a tree, cloaked, hunched, eyes gleaming faintly in the weak light. Samuel froze, heart pounding. The figure paused, seemingly studying him, then moved slightly, as if testing whether he was a threat. Every second stretched unbearably long. He inhaled slowly, forcing calm into his limbs. His mind raced for a plan. Should he confront or retreat, risk an encounter, or slip away unnoticed? The cold air pressed down on him, thick with uncertainty. Without warning, Luna lunged forward, barking sharply and snapping at the figure's legs. The figure recoiled, shouting unintelligibly, then vanished into the shadows. Samuel seized the moment, turning and urging Luna to follow as he moved swiftly into the trees. He pressed on, guided by instinct and the faint glow of his flashlight, weaving through the undergrowth. Each step was a gamble. Every crack of branch or a shift of snow could betray him. The trap had been set, but the game was far from over. Deeper into the forest, his thoughts churned. Was this the end of the line, or merely another twist in the web of secrets he was unraveling? The distant sound of footsteps persisted behind him, a constant reminder that danger lurked unseen. He paused briefly, listening intently. The wind howled louder, carrying whispers of unseen threats. Luna's quiet, tense presence was his only reassurance. He knew he had to keep moving, faster, quieter, before the shadows closed in completely. Every heartbeat blurred the boundary between safety and peril. The trap had been sprung, but the real challenge was only beginning. Yet amid the rising dread, a flicker of resolve ignited within him. He would find a way out. He had to. As he pushed forward, the landscape around him grew darker, more oppressive. The knowledge that he was walking into an unknown threat fueled his caution, but also sharpened his focus. The clues had led him here. Now, he needed to decide whether to confront the danger directly or to find a hidden escape route. His eyes caught a faint movement ahead, a slight shift among the trees. He tensed, muscles coiled, ready for whatever came next. Luna's body was taut, her ears alert, her growl low and steady. The game was escalating, and he knew he couldn't afford to be passive. The shadows thickened, and with each step, the forest seemed to close around him. The faint metallic clang echoed again, more distant but unmistakable. Something was approaching, perhaps reinforcements or another trap. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. The night was no longer just a backdrop, but an active participant in the danger. His mind raced, weighing options. Should he try to sneak past or prepare for a confrontation? The choice could determine whether he survived or became just another part of the forest's dark secrets. Suddenly, Luna snapped her head sharply to the side, her body tense. A figure emerged from behind a tree, cloaked and hunched, eyes flickering with a faint, unnatural light. Samuel froze, heart pounding fiercely. The figure paused, then moved slightly, as if testing whether he was a threat. In that frozen moment, Samuel realized that the trap was more complex than he had anticipated. It wasn't just about following footprints or reading messages. It was about reading the subtle cues, understanding the enemy's game. His grip tightened on his flashlight, ready for whatever was coming next. The forest held its breath. The game was far from over, and Samuel knew that the only way out was through cunning, patience, and a willingness to face whatever shadows lurked in the darkness. Samuel balanced precariously on the icy edge of the narrow ledge, the biting wind tearing through his coat and whipping his hair into a wild tangle. Below, the valley was swallowed in a swirling haze of snow and fog, the distant trees mere shadows flickering in the storm's chaos. The relentless roar of the wind battered the promontory, each gust threatening to unbalance him. His pulse hammered in his ears, shallow breaths fogging in the cold as he fought to keep his footing. Luna pressed close, her fur bristling, ears flattened against the icy assault, eyes darting nervously between the swirling whiteness and Samuel. Suddenly, a dark figure emerged from the blizzard, materializing like a specter against the white chaos. A silhouette, armed and steady, eyes locked directly on Samuel. The stranger's posture was rigid, rifle loosely but confidently aimed, finger resting on the trigger guard. Samuel's stomach clenched. The reality of the situation sank in. This was no longer a game of cautious observation. Confrontation was unavoidable. "Drop your weapon," the stranger commanded, voice hoarse but firm, cutting through the howling wind. His tone brooked no hesitation, each word edged with menace and authority. Samuel's mind spun with conflicting instincts. He could bolt, dive into the snow, and risk a fall, or stand his ground, risking injury, but perhaps protecting Luna and himself. The ledge offered little room to maneuver, and the storm's fury masked any chance of retreat. His hand instinctively reached into his coat, clutching the worn pocket knife he carried, a relic from a past life, now a fragile hope. Luna growled softly, hackles raised, low warning rumble vibrating in her throat. Her eyes flicked between the armed man and Samuel, sensing the tension, ready to defend if necessary. The stranger's gaze flicked briefly to the dog, then back to Samuel, suspicion flickering across his face. "Don't make me repeat myself," the man pressed, voice sharper now. "Surrender your weapons and come quietly. I don't want to hurt anyone." Samuel's thoughts raced. Surrendering would mean giving up his safety, his freedom, and possibly Luna's life. Resisting could cost him dearly, but turning away felt like surrendering his dignity and purpose. The wind intensified, whipping around them, carrying the threat of violence and emphasizing the tense silence that stretched between them. He inhaled slowly, steadying his trembling hand, and made a choice. Not because he believed it would be easy, but because retreat was no longer an option. The storm, the threat, all of it had pushed him beyond his cautious shell. His voice was calm but resolute. "Stay where you are," he said, voice muffled by the wind. "You don't want to do this." The stranger's eyes narrowed. "You think I care what I want? You're just another obstacle. Step back, or I'll make you." Luna edged forward slightly, hackles raised, teeth bared in a low growl. Samuel shifted his weight, eyes narrowing as he reached into his coat, fingers curling around the familiar handle of his pocket knife. The cold bit into his skin, numbing his fingertips, but he kept his focus steady. "Enough of this," Samuel finally said, voice firm. "You're not taking me without a fight." The stranger's grip tightened on the rifle. For a moment, it seemed he might fire, but then he hesitated, doubt flickering in his eyes. The wind carried a distant cry, perhaps an animal, perhaps the storm's lament. And in that instant, Samuel saw his chance. He lunged forward, pushing off the icy ledge with all his strength, a desperate leap toward the figure. Luna barked sharply, warning him, but the shot rang out first. Snow exploded into the air as the bullet cracked past him, embedding into the frozen earth. Samuel's body tumbled backward, losing his footing, but his hand caught on a loose rock, holding him from falling into the abyss. The shot missed its mark, and the man cursed, rushing forward, aiming again. Samuel scrambled to his feet, adrenaline flooding his veins. The narrow ledge was a trap, a thin strip of ice and stone, yet he refused to surrender to despair. He glanced at Luna, who was snarling fiercely, teeth bared, ready to strike. Her instinct was to defend her human. Samuel knew he couldn't let her down now. The stranger advanced, rifle raised once more, but Samuel saw his moment. With a quick, decisive motion, he drew the pocket knife, holding it out like a makeshift weapon. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. His voice cut through the storm's roar. "Stay back. I won't ask twice." The armed man hesitated, confusion flickering across his face, then anger. He leveled his rifle again, finger tightening on the trigger. Samuel's heart pounded, but he held his ground, eyes locked onto the man's. A sudden gust of wind hit, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The storm, the threat, the silence between them. The stranger's grip faltered, doubt crossing his features. Luna barked again, louder this time, forcing the man's attention to her. His eyes flicked from the dog to Samuel, weighing his options. Finally, the man cursed under his breath, lowering the rifle slightly. "You're lucky," he spat. "This isn't over." Samuel didn't lower his knife, but he took a cautious step back, keeping his eyes on the stranger. His body was trembling, not just from cold, but from relief and renewed resolve. The threat had been immediate and real, but he had survived. The storm raged on around them, but inside, a flicker of clarity had ignited. He took a slow breath, then turned away from the ledge, staggering back toward the shelter. Each step was heavy, yet lighter with the weight of the confrontation behind him. The horizon was still obscured by snow and fog, but the storm's grip seemed to loosen just enough to give him a fleeting chance to reconsider his next move. Luna pressed close, silent but alert, her eyes scanning the mist for any sign of pursuit. Samuel's mind raced. What had that man been after? Why had he come so deep into this frozen wilderness? And most importantly, what choices awaited him now? The storm continued its relentless assault, but Samuel felt a shift within, a spark of purpose amid the chaos. He had narrowly escaped death, yet the danger was far from over. The encounter had revealed his resilience, but also his vulnerability. His knowledge of the threat's presence deepened, and his understanding that survival depended on vigilance and adaptation. He paused briefly, listening to the wind's mournful cry and the pounding of his heart. The storm showed no sign of abating, but he sensed that, for now, he had gained a fragile moment of clarity. He steadied himself, then moved forward, each step heavier but more determined. Luna trotted beside him, her silent vigil unwavering. Samuel's thoughts churned. Who was that man? What did he want? And what new dangers lurked ahead? The storm's fury persisted, but within him, a quiet resolve grew stronger, ready to face whatever lay beyond the bleak horizon. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the frost-rimmed window, casting a pale glow over the quiet interior of Samuel's cabin. Outside, the melting snow revealed patches of earth, muddy and fragile, where early shoots pushed through the thaw, symbols of resilience amid the lingering cold. The air was still, filled with a gentle hush broken only by the faint drip of melting ice sliding from the eaves. Inside, Samuel sat motionless in his chair, eyes fixed on the landscape beyond the glass, a faint smile touching his lips as he absorbed the quiet awakening of the wilderness. Luna rested beside him, her breathing steady and calm. Her head was tucked beneath her paws, ears twitching occasionally as she listened to the subtle sounds of the waking forest. Her presence was a steady anchor, grounding Samuel amid swirling thoughts that refused to settle. He reached out slowly, fingers brushing the worn fabric of his coat, feeling the lingering cold still embedded in its fibers. Memories of recent days flickered like shadows. Dangerous encounters, cryptic messages, the final wish of the stranger who had entrusted him with a fragile hope. These thoughts pressed heavily on him, yet he recognized that they had led him to this moment of quiet reflection. A whisper of the stranger's voice echoed faintly in his mind, a mix of hope and regret. The final wish had been fulfilled, but at a cost that weighed on him. He wondered whether the sacrifice had truly been worth it, whether the burden had been lifted or merely shifted onto his shoulders. A deep breath steadied him, and he looked down at Luna, whose quiet gaze met his with understanding. Her steady presence reminded him that, despite the darkness of recent days, life persisted, resilient and enduring. His thoughts drifted to the relic lying on the table, a weathered, unassuming token of the journey, representing both loss and hope. He reached for it, fingers tracing the rough edges, feeling the faint pulse of history embedded within its surface. The message, the act of trust, the final kindness. These elements had woven into his consciousness, settling into a distant, almost surreal clarity. The relic was a symbol of the choices made, and the bonds forged in moments of desperation and courage. A sudden gust of cold wind slipped through a crack in the cabin wall, causing a shiver to run through him. He rose slowly, stretching stiff limbs, and gazed once more at the landscape beyond the window. The terrain stretched wide and unpredictable, inviting yet fraught with uncertainty. The retreating snow revealed patches of earth and sprouting shoots, fragile yet persistent, signs of renewal amid the remnants of winter's grip. His resolve hardened as he considered what lay ahead. He thought about the future, uncertain and riddled with questions. Could he trust again after all he had endured? Would old doubts resurface like shadows in his mind? Yet, beneath those doubts, a quiet determination was forming. The weight of the past was lighter now, replaced by a fragile thread of hope. He sensed that the cycle of hardship was not truly over, but had entered a new phase, one of cautious optimism and tentative openness. Luna rose at his side, her tail flicking softly. Together, they moved toward the door. Samuel hesitated briefly, hand reaching for the handle, then pushed it open. The crisp morning air greeted him like an awakening, invigorating and pure. He took a step forward, then another, each movement deliberate, as if testing his readiness. The landscape beckoned, wild and unpredictable, promising new challenges and discoveries. He cast a lingering glance back at the cabin, its worn walls, the faint smoke curling from the chimney, the sanctuary it had been. It had sheltered him through fears and revelations, a refuge amid chaos. Now, he understood that it was time to leave, at least temporarily, to face what awaited beyond. The past was behind him, but its lessons lingered, shaping his resolve. Descending the steps into the melting snow, Samuel's mind was filled with questions. What awaited him beyond the horizon? Could he trust again, or would old fears shadow his path? The answers remained elusive, but a newfound sense of readiness grew stronger with each step. The wilderness stretched before him, vast, silent, a canvas awaiting new stories and destinies. Luna trotted ahead, her nose to the ground, sensing subtle shifts in scent and sound. Samuel followed, shoulders squared, carrying the weight of memories and the fragile hope of renewal. He paused briefly, glancing back at the fading glow of dawn. A gentle breeze stirred the trees, whispering secrets only the forest knew. In that quiet murmur, he found a delicate promise, perhaps of redemption, perhaps of understanding. The past was behind him now. The future beckoned with an open, uncertain horizon. With steady resolve, Samuel took the first step into the day. The promise of change settled within him, soft yet firm. Whatever challenges awaited, he was no longer alone. The wilderness, the memories, Luna's silent companionship, all had become part of a larger story. A story of resilience and hope just beginning to unfold.